listening to the Redfield Arts Audio Podcast. Hi, this is Mark Redfield. Welcome to the podcast. Our guest on the podcast today is actor Jeffrey Combs. I've known Jeffrey and worked with Jeffrey since 2010, when I was fortunate enough, very lucky, to produce the one-man play Nevermore, An Evening with Edgar Allan Poe in Baltimore for Baltimore audiences. I had met and worked with the late director Stuart Gordon in late 2009. It was their desire to perform Nevermore in Baltimore. And Stuart and I began a long process of communication and talking on the phone in how to get Nevermore to Baltimore. And finally, we managed to do it for Poe's birthday in January of 2010. That's when I really met Jeffrey, and I had met him socially prior to that over the years, but that is the first time that I was really able to work with him and meet and get to know him. And I'm very glad that a very long and fruitful friendship has come about since then. Halloween of 2014, there was a performance of Nevermore in Boston that I recorded. And last year, Halloween of 2020, we turned that recording into an audio book of Nevermore, An Evening with Edgar Allan Poe, which is available now. And it's been a wonderful journey since then. And so we'll talk, I'm sure, a lot about Nevermore, Edgar Allan Poe, ReAnimator, Star Trek, television, movies, and I'm sure that because we're both actors, that a lot of the talk and chat will be very actor-centric. So off to the races we go. This conversation was recorded in April of 2021. Enjoy.
So what is the most traumatic, what's the worst thing that's ever happened to you on stage? Either a wardrobe malfunction, it's a contact sport, a stage injury, but what comes to mind?
Well, the first thing that came to mind was, we've all had stuck on stage when another actor has forgotten to make their entrance. That's always a joy. There's an old actor, he's long passed away. He was a character, stage actor, and he did some films. His name was G. Wood. And I shared a dressing room with him a couple of times, and I scared him one day, and he said, "You gave me a lurgy." I said, "A lurgy? What is a lurgy?" And he said, "It's a sudden rush of shit to the heart." And all actors have experienced lurgies on stage. It's not like film and television where you can go cut.
Right.
Yeah. And let's do another. No, you're in it, and it's all in.
Well, now see, I have to.
Yeah. Go ahead.
No, I'm going to be using that term because, I've had my share, but lurgy, that's pretty damn good.
We've all had lurgy. The worst thing that ever happened to me on stage, I was doing a production of Twelfth Night in Portland, Oregon. The summer kind of wrapped 2 shows in rotation. And I was playing Sir Andrew Aguecheek. And I was the scene where I'm leaving. I've had enough, and I'm leaving, and I bring in a big chest, and because I'm leaving, and I'm packed, and I'm gone, and and they, at some point, another actor would push the chest towards me. And I would do sort of a pratfall over the chest, and ha ha ha, and then I would grab the chest and leave in the scene. Well, Portland can rain, and this was an outdoor production on grass.
Oh, man.
And they said, oh, the performance tonight, our contingency, it's raining, so we're moving to the inside theater. Okay, so now it's an indoor production. That's fine. We adapt. We go in. Who doesn't adapt is the actor who pushes the chest, which is one sort of force when you're on ground. It's a completely another force when you're on wood, smooth wood. That son of a bitch, that chest flew at me like a bobsled, and just slammed into my toe and my shin. It took me out, took me down, and flash of pain, white lightning pain, and I managed to still fall well. I didn't do the fall. I did fall. It wasn't a stunt.
Yeah.
And I, more so than I ever did, the audience just loved it. Loved it. Big applause.
Keep it in the show. It works.
And I'm backstage in a frozen position, doubled over, grabbing my foot and not moving, just stuck in abject pain for a long time. And got through the show on adrenaline, and then went to the emergency room, and yeah, your toe's broken. You broke your toe.
Oh, man.
That's
a pretty.
So
that's top of the list. Yeah, that's pretty good.
That was pretty awful. And then so now I'm hobbling. Now for the rest of the summer, I'm sort of. What people don't realize, when you break a toe, it affects your entire alignment. Now for months, I am walking on the side of my foot to protect my toe, my big toe. It just has ramifications for a long time.
Were you doing other things in rep that summer? Did it or was it just 12th night? Yeah.
No, we would 12th night and Tartuffe. No, I was on my feet, Yeah, when you're doing period stuff like that, you can't turn into Lionel Barrymore and just always have your character in a wheelchair or behind the desk. You can't.
Right.
So, no, I hobbled through.
Outdoor theater's never been my favorite either. My 12th night I played Sebastian, and we had to do an outdoor because they got some of the production money from the city, and that was part of the requirement. You got to do 2 days. And then I did a Grumio in Taming of the Shrew, and it was an outdoor performance, and I was waiting for a cue. And I don't bite my fingernails, but I don't know why my fingers were in my mouth, waiting, listening, watching, and I chipped a lower tooth, broke a tooth. Anyway, so you when did the whole acting bug bite you? Was that early? Was it in high school? Was your family supportive?
Well,
I'm always curious about where the needle hits the record with an actor.
Right, that's a good way of putting it. In a weird sort of way, it kind of found me. I'd always been fascinated with film and television. I had an absolute, up in a small town, I had no real common, often interaction with live theater at all. When I was in the 6th grade, we took a field trip over to the next town over, slightly bigger, with a 2-year college, and to see a play.
Hmm.
That was my first live performance experience, and it was dazzling to me. It was Emperor's New Clothes. You know, it wasn't a massively opulent production, but the magic of live theater really hit me right between the eyes. That this was a world. This was a world. Little did I know that right out of high school, I went to that college and I went to that theater program, and it is the cornerstone of everything that happened to me since, because it was a spectacular plant, artistic, run by a visionary man who just a kaleidoscope of different styles and really, really great artists in residence coming in, and high level of production values on all the productions. It was really what shaped me. But that 6th grade experience, the next time it kind of raised its head was I took a drama class in junior year of high school for an easy A, and girls. That's what I was thinking. It's an elective. I don't have to do anything. There can't be much homework. And then, hey, girls are going to be in there. So, out of laziness, I suppose, or maybe subliminally interest, but not overt. And the first play came along, and I did not audition for the play. Not interested. My drama teacher, a couple of days later, said, "Jeff, I want you to wait after class." What did I do? I don't even know what I did, but dang it. And he basically said, "We've cast the show, someone's dropped out, and I want you to take the part." And I was just adamant. Not interested. I'm not going to do that. I don't want to do that. If I had wanted to do that, I would audition. No, what are you doing? And a good friend of mine who was playing the lead, it was kind of a pincer move. They were both like, "Come on, yeah." And just to shut them up, I said, "Fine." And I remember walking home, beating myself up, regretting that I said yes. Opening night, I said my first line, and I got a huge laugh. And I think that's when the dopamine hit my brain.
Yeah,
I really do.
Yeah.
That is when the needle. There was such a rush of validation, I should say, that was sort of a real turning point. Oh my God, I like this.
Yeah.
I had two older brothers that were farming socially, and I never felt like I was. And this was sort of a venue that they didn't dare go into and had no flag stuck in the ground claiming it. And it was controlled. You know, Johnny Carson was always socially awkward, but he felt very controlled on stage. It was almost like, this is where I'm full myself, and not full of myself, but I understand myself in this. I'm comfortable here. I can control this. And so I kind of that resonates with me. I know what he means. So. Hard to.
And so your training. You're from California. Your training is
Where'd you go to school? Where did you train in college?
In a small town on the Central Coast called Santa Maria. There was we called it a junior college, a 2-year college with an incredible theater department because of the man who ran it. He managed to get money from the city to build a kind of a replica of the Guthrie.
Ah, wow.
Years before I went there. And he would bring in really top-notch people from all over the country in the summer and a rep of 6 shows in the summer. This was a creative stew. It's very just musicals to Brecht to Shakespeare to Pinter. It was a cornucopia variety. And I wouldn't say that I had a lot of in-class kind of training, although there was an acting class, and certainly I took movement classes, but it was rehearsal in the morning, rehearsal in the afternoon, performance at night. I was wall-to-wall.
Yeah.
Yeah. It was a wall-to-wall experience.
You can't get better training than that. I've always felt that the audience teaches you everything, and to be able to do it, that's what we need to do. Yeah.
Well, it also, I was surrounded by, I call them pace setters. Oh, if I want to actually do this, it has to be approached by this good example here and that one over there. Oh, that's how you do it. That's the kind of commit I see. I see. This is not something to do for a kick. It is a craft that you take as seriously as if you were pursuing ballet.
Yeah.
Kind of discipline and focus daily. And of course, I've lost all that. I'm lazy as shit now. But the point is that I was given really great examples all around at a pivotal sort of age where those kinds of ideals are implanted. And but I did know that after 3 years of that I probably needed to counterpoint this with breaking the engine down, tearing the car apart, and taking movement classes, voice classes. And so I auditioned for a number of training programs, and I got accepted to a training program at the University of Washington in Seattle. So I moved up there, and I loved my time up there, but it also made me really aware of what a jewel where I was, because it was more academia. It was much more of a mixed bag in terms of quality. And so I've been spoiled without really knowing it. And so, anyway, but I went through that program. And, when you go into an actor training program, you kind of, the pieces are all over the place. The engine's not running. You're examining things. You're self-conscious about your choices. You're not, instinct goes away, and it's more about how things work, techniques and stuff. So, you get through that, and then you...
Yeah. It's funny, you made a crack about being lazy nowadays. And it's funny, the first thing that popped into my mind is that I think that after acting for a very long time in theater and film, we actors have learned so much that we begin to forget. And it isn't exactly laziness. It is that mechanisms are in place. Things are in place. Yeah, the material is new. The moment is new. You're on stage or you're in a film, but we've been doing this. We know what we're doing, I think.
Know what we're doing.
So maybe it's not exactly being lazy, but I know what you mean. We know how to solve problems. Yeah, we know how to solve
on the fly. I've seen this before, and we're confident enough to, like, when you do a stage play, it's kind of like, when do I move? Why do I move? Why would I cross down there? What's the motivation for doing that? And after a while, you just find, like, fuck it, I'm going to walk down there. It feels like this is when I would do it. And blocking sort of comes instinctually. You don't even think about it anymore. A lot of young people are like, I don't know where to go, what to do, and when.
Well, thank God we lose a certain... I'm sorry, I cut you off. Well, we lose a certain amount of self-consciousness, I think. Because I leap immediately to new actors, and I don't know what to do with my hands. And the assignment in the classroom is put your hands in your pocket. How do you... and that's
your pocket.
Right.
Yeah.
How did you feel? Do you remember what was it a smooth, easy transition into the professional world? Because then you did a lot of theater. Did it just sort of continue to move in a good place? Because you were working, you had mentioned Guthrie, but then you were working around the country, and you were working up and down California. Yeah?
Yeah. Yes. Even before we had graduated, my class at University of Washington, we all took a trip down to San Francisco to audition for various regional theaters to maybe get some employment right out of school, kind of thing.
Yeah.
And one of them was the Old Globe in San Diego.
Yeah. Wow. Yeah.
And I thought, I'm not the one that they're going to pick. I don't think that I am the strongest Shakespearean actor, let's say, of my class. But I did it, and I was the one that they said, "Would you come and join us this summer?" Which was I was sort of flabbergasted at that. And so even before I graduated, I actually left college a little early. I still got my diploma. They allowed me to finish my courses in absentia and everything. Maybe it was like 3 weeks early. And my classmates hated me, Fuck you. What are you?
Well, he's working.
He's working right out of the gate. The bastard. Yeah. I was very fortunate, and I was very fortunate with casting and a wonderful. You just never know, because I got asked to join the company. I said yes, and then about 2 weeks later, they called me and said, "The Globe burned down." Like, what? The theater burned down. It was arsoned. I went, okay, well, I guess I'm out of a job. There you go. And they said, however, we're going to build an outdoor space, and we're still going to go forward. When I arrived in San Diego, the Old Globe was really a charred cement foundation and nothing else, and they were already building. Yeah.
And I'm trying to remember when this was. Is this about
1978?
Oh, okay.
1978. The Old Globe burned down.
Right.
Yep. And but out of those ashes, rose an outdoor space, and eventually, in the next few 3-4 years, the Globe was rebuilt bigger and better than it ever was.
Yeah, that's right. That's right.
So,
maybe that's why the 80s and the reopening. That's why that sticks in my head. Yeah.
Right.
You've said we were chatting once a while back, and you had said something that we were talking about your film work, and you said that in your early theater work, you did a lot of comedies, and you were looked upon as a comic actor in some ways.
Absolutely. Comedy, physical actor, very physical.
Yeah.
Very agile, quick, athletically moving, wiry speedball, and more light roles.
Yeah.
I was always sort of not anymore, but I was sort of boyish. I didn't look my age. Let's put it that way. I looked younger than I was.
Yeah.
And so I don't think people, and I was a little more energetic than people that are maybe more laid back. So it was a natural thing of like, you do the funny stuff.
Right. When did you decide to? When did you decide to settle down and move to and find work in California and move into film work or TV work and start auditioning?
Well, I was again very fortunate. I was in my second. It was in my second summer at the Old Globe. They asked me to come back the second summer. And I was thrilled about that. And the summer was almost over. I remember it was on my birthday. And I had just finished a performance of The Comedy of Errors.
Okay.
Which was a huge success at the Globe that summer. And after the show, a woman came up to me as I came out of the dressing room, and she said, I'm a talent agent, and what are you doing after this? I have an office in New York, and I have one in L.A. It was really pretty that cut and dry.
Wow.
I had never I'd never heard of her before, but you know, she was pretty respected as an independent agent, and was until she passed away some years later. So, this was a gift on my birthday. Which
is September. Yeah, right?
Which September 9th. And it was like,
wow.
You know, is this a joke? Is this a joke?
A gift, yeah.
But it wasn't. And so I opted for LA.
Yeah.
And so I moved to LA in the enviable position of having an agent in place. And then I hit the wall. Because any kind of theater momentum that I had, nobody in LA cares about this.
Right, and particularly not then or now, but
and you haven't done anything. You know, as far as they're concerned, you haven't.
Had you done, before the move to LA, had you done any independent film or local commercials? Had you done any taste of any kind of that, or student films or anything?
No.
Yeah.
Nothing.
Yeah.
Nothing. No. Nothing like that. Nothing that I was not in Seattle, certainly not in Santa Maria. There's, you know, nowadays everybody has a camera and can make movies, but in those days, that's a much higher bar to be able to. No.
Yeah.
The answer is no. So it was a real sort of in-your-face kind of learning curve. I think my first couple auditions, or maybe even more than the first couple, was like, okay, that's great. Can you do it again? Only do less.
Right.
Because, because I'm trying to hit the back row. And they're really not interested in that at all. Don't do that. In any event, there were no real opportunities, and it got depressing for me. I was quite restless, not knowing. I was very used to being busy, all of a sudden, I really didn't know how to fill my days. And I kind of would fixate on, is the phone going to ring, and is it my agent? I hope so.
And the very fact of Los Angeles geography doesn't help that feeling of aloneness if you're not busy.
No.
It's hard. It's hard.
It's very competitive. There's just everywhere you go, if somebody is an actor. Everybody, and it's very competitive. And so it just becomes a numbers game, and, having said this, I got a few little day gigs here and there, one little bad little horror movie to just see how seedy that world was for a minute or two. Or at least that particular set. It was like, oh my God, this is not theater, okay? 3 years, let's jump ahead 3 years later. And through all of this, I have been still going back and doing theater. I would just have nothing going on, and then theater opportunities would come along, and my agent wouldn't want me to go and do them.
Yeah,
you need to remain available. For what? For an audition that this is something where I can keep my muscles toned, but you want me to atrophy spiritually too. So I would survive by continuing to do a play, but usually in more local regional theaters. South Coast Rep was nearby, drive down there. The Taper, you could work at the Taper.
Mark Taper Forum, sure.
Mark Taper Forum. And so I finally got, this is really true. It happened, and it's Hollywood all over the place. I was doing the lead in Playboy of the Western World at South Coast. And it was
a fine Irish play. Yeah.
Oh, it's a wonderful role. It was grand production. And I was just so great. And I got to the theater early on opening night because of traffic, but also just prep. And the stage manager comes to me with a letter. And she said, "This came for you, Jeff, to the theater. I'm not living down there. I'm commuting." And it's a letter on really nice paper, parchment paper, from my agent. And I went, "Oh, isn't that nice? The opening night, they're sending me have a great opening. This is great." Open it up.
Yeah.
And we regret to inform you that we're dropping you.
Oh, wow. Oh, man.
And I was like, whoa, wait a minute. I'm about to open so
yeah.
There were no cell phones then, or if they were about the size of like a microwave.
Yeah.
But I went to a payphone and I called her and she said, "Listen, I have a new partner. We have to, he's become a full partner. He was just an agent here. We went through our list. And this guy would never even make eye contact with me at any time whenever I would like desperately go visit the office just to say hi, you know. And you want half an agency working for you was the question. It was like, well, if it's you, yeah, but clearly you don't. So it was pretty devastating, to say the least, to be rejected like that. However, that play got grand reviews, and we won 9 LA Drama Critics Awards that year.
Wow.
I put together a packet and sent to 10 agencies with the reviews and my resume, and 3 or 4 replied. I chose one, and moving on. But that was an abject lesson. In the face of success can be utter defeat and humiliation, all in one night.
And if that isn't, as you say, so Hollywood, and if that isn't the cliche of, well, one door closes, another door opens, and I can't even imagine that kind of news on
an opening night.
Opening night. And thank you, but no thank you.
I go, why did they mail it to the theater? They knew that I wasn't living down there.
Yeah.
They have my home address. How do they even have I think it was just an aide who just said, oh, he's working right now down at that theater, and that's probably where he's at. So, you know, it's just probably a fluky sort of decision. However, synchronicity of it, that it actually arrived on opening night, not the day before, not the day after, but I didn't let it throw me, though, okay? It didn't affect my performance. If anything, it bolstered me to steely-eyed resolve.
Well, it made you fierce. You had to. You have to do the work.
I'm doing it defiantly now. You know, I'll show you. Anyway,
let's jump
never... Yeah.
No, I cut you off. You just said I never what?
No, I never really ever... Things work out for a reason, I want to say, and I held a certain resentment to that for losing faith in me like that. I thought it was implicitly unfair of her to do that, but on the other hand, she did get me to L.A. I did sort of get on the dance floor a bit, but the opportunity never came along. And I remember at one point her telling me, Jeffrey, you're a long run. In other words, you aren't somebody who's going to hit it right away, but I believe. And then, really, I guess not so much, huh? What happened to that?
I mean, well, let's jump cut to better days and a door opening. What's the time frame from that moment to the audition that brought you to the film, the friendship with the late Stuart Gordon, and the long collaboration that followed that? How long was it from being dropped by the agent to that audition for ReAnimator?
I would say about a year. About 1 year.
Not bad in Hollywood.
I moved along, had another agent, and the next summer I was doing a play in a very small theater in L.A., a 3-man play, and I didn't invite them, but a casting director saw the show and afterwards said, I knew him. I'd auditioned for him before, but never got cast. And he said, I know some friends of mine are doing a movie. There's a role you might be right for. I went, sure, right. Well, so and it turns out that that's what it was. ReAnimator.
Wow. Yeah.
If you know anything about it, listen, this is just another audition, and you know what I mean? It doesn't mean you have the job. So it's just an opportunity. And so I went in and I met this bushy-haired, bearded dude, Stuart Gordon, and I read for him, and he said, this is based on H.P. Lovecraft. I bullshitted my way through that. Oh, yeah, okay. But I really had no frame of reference for that. So I got a call back and went to that, and I was offered the role. As simple as that. My dilemma was at the same time I was offered to play Romeo. In a stage in L.A., directed by a acting teacher by the name of Milton Casalis.
Mm-hmm.
And he was a bit of a guru dude,
Yeah.
Students were just hanging on his every word kind of guy, and I really didn't know him, but I auditioned, and he wanted to double cast Romeo and Juliet, and it was about, and he offered me, we'll want you to play one of the Romeos, and it was at about that point that I got offered ReAnimator. So I was literally like, horror movie or
wow. Mm-hmm.
Romeo. And I chose to do the movie because why am I in L.A.? I'm in L.A. to try to do some film here. So that was sort of the determining factor. I was quite torn about which way I should go. But not bad. Not bad to have that kind of spectrum of choices. It's not like you want to play this mad scientist or that mad scientist. It was like you want to play one of the great lovers in classical literature or that scientist in a low-budget horror movie.
No, absolutely. That's pretty damn good. I can understand that dilemma, and you chose wisely. Did you have a sense? It's funny what we find out later as we become friends with people. Did you have any clue during the audition and callback for ReAnimator of Stuart's background in theater, or did that come quickly later after you were cast?
I think that I knew that Stuart came from theater.
Mm-hmm.
I knew that he ran a theater called the Organic Theater, which I'd heard something about in the past, but exactly what kind of theater that was, I don't really know. It didn't really, I wasn't aware that it was pretty avant-garde at times, almost like shock theater. He really had a proclivity for that kind of in-your-face, kind of breaking the boundaries of expectation kind of stuff. I didn't really know that. I just knew that he had run a theater. It was pretty evident also in that he wanted to rehearse. We rehearsed for 2 weeks, every day, doing scenes somewhere, his place, or we would get together long before the shooting started, which I have come to realize more and more that doesn't happen in film. You kind of rehearse or you shoot, which is like the worst way if you really want to solve problems. So he was right in knowing out of theater that preparation is everything.
Yeah.
Solve these problems way before, so you walk in and you already know basically what you're going to be. Expect it.
Yeah, because Stuart,
you know what I mean?
Stuart's made no bones in the past talking about ReAnimator that as a filmmaker he didn't know what he was doing. He didn't know direction of looks. He didn't know this. And he was relying on, there's a big learning curve there. But what he did know was actors and story. And, here's something I've never asked you. When you get the script, you get your cast, you got the script. I've never read Dennis Paoli's script, ReAnimator. Was it on the page as wet and gory? What's Jeff Combs' reaction to this as it's unfolding?
Well, I was very fortunate, incredibly fortunate.
Because where I'm going with this is there are horror films and there are horror films, and now here comes Stuart Gordon.
Well, and here comes my assessment, which turned out to be flat-ass wrong. I looked at the script, and now you have to put this in perspective here.
Context is yeah.
Context is everything. The original script, which I still have, had a lot more scenes. It was a story about the lovers. And
yes. Yeah.
What are we going to do? What are we going
your fans,
through?
Right. Your fans know this, but this is Barbara Crampton and Bruce Abbott. Yeah.
Yes. Barbara Crampton and Bruce Abbott. And look at the billing. Starring Bruce Abbott, Barbara Crampton.
Yeah.
And then it all goes on down, and then I have sort of like, I think, last card. And Jeffrey Combs as Herbert West. It was not viewed at that point that, like, Herbert West was going to be as iconic, thankfully, as he's become. It was, and the billing shows that, okay? It was a strong supporting role.
Yeah.
In the initial go. It was only in editing that they kind of streamlined and jettisoned a lot of what are we going to do scenes.
A lot of the Romeo and Juliet. Because the spine of it, sorry, I'm just getting excited. The spine of it is the struggle between the villains. Yeah,
that's right. And it was so bloody. I'd never really read anything like that. And I was lucky to have Bruce Abbott. We are peers. We didn't know each other, but we were both West Coast theater actors, and we had a lot of friends in common. That happens a lot with actors. Oh, you know so-and-so? Yeah, no, I went to school, and I did yeah. And so we were really in harmony, and we were both like, my God, what are we going to do here? And between us, we decided that we would, pardon the pun, inject some humor whenever we could to sort of offset this barrage of blood. Otherwise, there's no relief. There's no relief. We just made that decision between the two of us. So we tried to find timing and things here and there to just sort of break this consistent, assault of blood, counterpointed, if you will. So, So it wasn't ever like this is a dark humor horror movie. It was never articulated to me by Stuart as that.
I get that based on my experiences with Stuart, which always centered around Nevermore, really. We did have a really great chat after ReAnimator the musical. I saw it in New York. We've had wonderful conversations about theater and that kind of thing. But what I'm trying to say is that it is the story, but those tools, whether it's gore and blood and whatever, it's these are all colors and part of the tools in telling the story. And so I don't think he thinks about them consciously. They just are what are needed for telling this story.
Well, he's a marvelous craft about story and character and who does what, when, and why.
Yeah.
He knows how to tell a good tale. He really is a craftsman that way, Stuart. It's one of his strengths when he's creating a script. He's very hands-on with all of that. I remember years later, Barbara and I were shooting Castle Freak.
Let me interject. What I love about Castle Freak is, directors love working with actors over and over. Because they know them, they know where to push, they know their strengths, and they just like them. They like being in their company. And what I love about those two films is how different. It really does show a wonderful range from you, Jeff. You can't get any different from West and the father in Castle Freak. I'm sorry to interrupt, but
yeah, thank you for that. It's a different headspace for sure. But we were sitting having dinner or lunch, and Barbara and I were on one side of the table, and we were kind of talking about ReAnimator a little bit, reminiscing, and said something about the humor and it being funny. And Stuart on the other side of the table went, "ReAnimator's not funny."
Huh.
And we both kind of looked at each other and at him, and it was like, then why do people tend to laugh at it then at times? And rightfully so. I think what it did is it kind of bespoke I think it surprised Stuart that it had dark humor. I think Stuart's initial intent, I can't and won't speak for him, my instinct is, and my experience is, he thought it was a serious piece.
And yeah.
And he kind of felt like it got away from him a little bit in terms of, well, wow, that's not what it's kind of like having a child and you go, oh,
yeah,
this isn't kind of the child that I envisioned, but okay, I love it still, but wow, that didn't turn out what I thought,
yeah.
So
well,
that's
the thing I so grasp what you're saying based on that. And boy, my brain is having a short circuit only because I saw what he had enormous control over with ReAnimator the musical. And you can't tell me that wasn't played for the dark satire and the outright humor. Also trading on what the audience knows with the film. So it's interesting because
you're bringing up something really interesting, because I saw it on opening night. He invited us, and Bruce and I went together. One of the more surreal experiences of my life. What? And having known that Stuart felt that ReAnimator wasn't funny, and that it should be taken, and it was approached as serious at the time. And then I go and see that musical, and he is doing nothing but making fun of it.
Yeah.
It's nothing but a dark romp of gags. And I to this day, it's like, but did you just say fuck it and went for it? Because it's completely different tone. All nuance or motivation that went out the window, and it just became this
it's
dark romp.
In a strange way, I find it marvelous in and of itself. It's incredibly presentational. I mean, when you saw it, when it was in LA when it opened, I mean, it's right down to the casting. Was George Wendt involved that early?
Yes,
because he was in a number of productions and a fine actor, but already it's one of those. It's a casting where, and even though on Cheers the character is fairly played, the characters are played straight, played naturalistically. I think there's an expectation that you're going toward comedy. I mean, just by his name. I'm getting off the subject, but the curious thing is that first film he's working with producer band, the production company going to distribute it in theaters, and a certain amount of not total control over things. I don't even know whether Stuart, in post with ReAnimator, how much he was able to communicate or talk to Richard Band about the score, which colors it a certain way, gives it a drive.
Yep.
Yeah.
Well, this is what I understand, that soon after shooting the movie ReAnimator, Stuart was obligated to go back to Chicago to either direct a play or oversee the theater in some way. He was needed there.
Yeah.
And the editing was sort of left in the hands of the editor, wonderful editor Lee Percy, who went on to do many good things, and Albert Band, who was Charlie Band's dad, old Hollywood. He was John Huston's assistant for many years. Albert Band directed a lot of gladiator movies in Italy and Spain,
right,
in the late 50s, early 60s. He was no slouch. He knew film, and it was sort of left to them to kind of get the film cut to a good degree.
Yeah.
I'm not sure that he certainly learned over the years, but I don't think Stuart really knew how to do that.
And then over time, an approach to this material in this other medium, on stage as a musical. Sure, there is a new collaborator that he's working on the book and the music with, and he's going to work with new actors. He's got ideas. He's in a different element that he loves, which is live theater. But I'm guessing, as I'm having a small revelation here, and boy, I know you do, but I do miss Stuart. And I think over time, seeing the film with audiences, audience feedback, I think one changes one's percent. The film stays the same. We change. Yeah. So maybe that was the only way he could do a musical of this thing.
Right. And I think he went whole on. Stuart, whatever decision he makes, it's full. And he went, okay, fine.
Yeah.
The musical is going to be something robust and silly. I remember at the end of the movie and at the end of the play, Herbert is grabbed by the large intestines
Right.
and pulled into the stomach. You remember that, right?
Oh, yeah.
And it's kind of a climactic moment. Oh my God, what's going to happen to Herbert? Is he dead? Is he alive? He's disappeared. It's kind of dramatic in the film. When we went and saw the musical, you know, Herbert grabs the intestines and then faces the audience, breaks the fourth wall, as we call it,
Yeah.
and proceeds to use the large intestines to hose the audience.
Right.
And
I
I'm
was
going, well, guess
I'm
there's
gonna
no
let me
danger
interject. Let me interject and remind the audience. When you saw ReAnimator the musical in the theater, you obviously buy a ticket to a seat, and the first 3 or 4 rows were the blood seats,
Splash
the wet
zone.
seats, the splash zone.
Splash.
And
That's what they
if
call
you
it.
knew, so this is, oh my gosh, this goes back years to Rocky Horror Show and the water guns and the audience. But this is from the stage side, the actors soaking the first few rows. And if you knew it, you covered yourself in a piece of plastic to get sprayed with in the splash zone.
The theater loves it, okay? The theater, the audience just is eating this spectacle up. But I'm sitting there going, this is completely not motivated. This is just a two-dimensional cheap thrill that undermines the characters. There's no danger here anymore. Where's the dramatic conflict in this?
I don't know where yes. And I don't know where my brain is going with this, but, ReAnimator the musical was only a few years ago. And I'm wondering, in this age we live in, where there's no thread to pick up in what I'm about to say, Jeff, but it just pops into my mind. We're in an age where there is a bizarre audience participation in social media, where fans can demand the Snyder cut of Justice League, and then HBO, they'll put the money into it, and lo and behold, it's delivered. So there is this strange, even though that kind of audience participation goes back in the theater a long way. Yes, audiences ate that up, and they came expecting to that. And not to jump ahead, because we're going to be talking about Nevermore, there are mixed audiences there that come to see Jeff Combs live.
Well,
there's an expectation and an energy there. Yeah.
Right. Well, if they're coming with an expectation, as long as they're going to come and they're sitting there, I can at least change that expectation. Now you're here, and whatever
and
your
the
expectation,
dance. Yeah, right.
Yeah, whatever your expectation was, we're taking a left turn. It's not going to be. This ain't Herbert West. There's not going to be, blood spurting everywhere,
and no glowing green syringes. No.
No, welcome to the land of literature, maybe, we call it. It's a different vibe, and I don't think that anybody, came and saw that show and said, gee whiz, darn it, that just didn't, I didn't expect that, but but at the same time, I'm hopefully made on hope that they're enlightened, but also satisfied and surprised in a in a good way. And that's all I can ask. If one thing gets them in the door, I sort of liken it to a musician. There's a guitarist that I like named David Lindley. Mm-hmm. David Lindley was the guitarist for all of Jackson Browne's songs. Slide guitarist, running on MT, just rock, really, soaring, beautiful rock guitarist. Well, I saw that he was playing at a venue near me, and I went, oh, wow, David Lindley, wow, okay, man. And I got there, and he's this older gentleman sitting on a stool, not even a chair, and surrounded by bizarre string instruments from around the world, like African string instruments, Indian string. And he proceeds to unplug, play these instruments quite well. Mm-hmm. Now, I wasn't disappointed. Well, maybe a little. I did want to hear a little bit of plug-in shit, but I was pleasantly surprised at his diversity of interest. Yeah. So you can get your butt in a seat with an expectation of one thing. That doesn't mean you're going to get it.
Yeah.
You might get something better. I know that people came to see Nevermore. There was a faction that came to see because they loved Poe, and there was a faction that came to see it because they loved Stuart Gordon as a director, or they like Jeffrey Combs as Herbert West.
Sure.
Or maybe Jeffrey Combs from Star Trek. I don't care as long as they come, and then it's my time.
Jeff, one of the things that I'm curious about at this period, you've got something wonderful that a lot of working actors don't really get. And, all actors have some sort of side hustle at some point in their career to make ends meet. And they can work a career and be unknown, but pretty quickly after ReAnimator. It's the timing of ReAnimator is a theatrical release. It's the expansion of VHS and Errol's video and then Blockbuster video. There were sequels to ReAnimator. There is Stuart Gordon's career taking off in a direction. You guys are suddenly the horror guys. I'm curious about two things, and we've never talked about this. Before we worked together, we actually did meet very casually at a convention or two. I'm just curious about, I remember, it's, a group of people, it's after work or, after the show in a bar, and here's hi, hello, and, there's Jeffrey Combs. Hello, Mr. Combs. I don't know. But it was no more than that. And,
right.
But I'm curious, because we are, we are chosen. We have no choice. And the genre chooses you with the success and the fandom that grows from ReAnimator. I'm just curious about your perspective as that began to develop as a career as an actor, but then your first experiences with conventions and fandom, because, from 76 to 75 to 85, they're far and in between, and they're mostly science fiction conventions, and Star Trek is established and growing, and the San Diego Comic-Con is established and growing. And now, let's pretend COVID and pandemic didn't happen. I mean, you can't go to a town without there being a horror convention. Film festivals did the same thing, became ubiquitous, and there was one everywhere. What was your eye-opener? What was your entree and experience with that? And what was your first convention?
As I recall, my very first convention was a Fangoria convention in Boston. They flew me to Boston, and as I recall, it was in a hotel very near the Boston Commons. It was like in the center of Boston. And I was sort of surprised at the turnout and the enthusiasm. It was, when you do film, you do not connect with your audience or how big the house is, or you just don't know the effect you're having. So there's that. And what I learned over the years is as time went on, the conventions are less and less in the center of town. Right. They tend to be in an obscure town or an outskirt town, and not in a particularly we can go across the street and eat kind of place, because it's driven by the hotels charging too much,
the economics,
and
right.
So it's not so glamorous. My wife goes, "Oh, you went to Boston? That must have been nice." Well, maybe the first time was kind of historic, but subsequent ones are like, but I was kind of in a, warehouse district or out by the airport, or
right.
It's not really glamorous.
One of the strangest ones that I was ever a guest at, it was in Wisconsin. I can't remember the name of the show. It only lasted a few years. I was in a room with Larry, the soup Nazi. Oh my God, I just blanked on Larry's name. And Lloyd Kaufman was in the room. And it was in the Cow Palace of the State Fairgrounds. And it was so far away from everything. The second day, Larry and I watched. I had a little mini DVD player, and we watched Hitchcock's Vertigo. There was no traffic. And then wandering around in the building, I discovered that the International Clown College was housed in that building.
There you go.
The whole thing was bizarre. But, and the thing is that, fans, and now, fans have had kids, and there are generations that have grown up with your films. And so that has to be a strange thing. And then there's got to be, I would think, a kind of difference in the energy with the so-called horror fans, extremely fierce, extremely loyal in their love, and you have a distinction of playing, I've lost count, 7, 9 different characters in 2 different Star Trek series, and you've done Star Trek conventions, and you've done the Star Trek cruise thing, which I really want us to be talking about Nevermore, and I can't wait to hear what it's like to perform Nevermore on a boat. But right. So this is, I think, a wonderful thing that few actors have. You were sort of chosen by the fantasy, horror, sci-fi genres and that fandom. And has that been okay?
Of course it has. Listen, every actor with any chops does not want to be categorized.
Or
they don't want
to.
They don't want to be categorized, typecast. Same thing. Like, I think of very capable actors that prove that they're capable because of a gig on a soap opera. Right. Well, it perpetuates itself, and the next thing you know, they've been doing it for 10 years, and then maybe they're not doing it, and then they go back out into the marketplace, and I don't mean this in a negative way, but the stigma that's put on him is, oh, you are a soap opera actor. So when we need a soap opera actor, we'll know who to call.
Right.
And suddenly you've done your job well. You have found a way to blend and maybe even elevate a particular category, and you kind of did it so well that I think the human mind, those that want to categorize actors, I'm talking about studios, directors, casting directors, there's so many that it's just best to label. It's just best to label them, and then my job's easier because I don't have to be imaginative about it. So how in the world could a soap opera actor even get an audition for something outside of what they're, oh no, he's not right for it. We know his work. He's just not quite right for this, without giving the guy or woman a chance.
Yeah.
It is. It's ever been thus, I suppose. But it is there, and you ran through a whole thing ever since ReAnimator and this trajectory, and it all happened. And I'm sitting here going, he's forgetting all of the empty space here.
Yeah,
he's forgetting that after ReAnimator came out, the studios did not approach me. Big agencies did not approach me, which is what you usually think. Oh man, they make a splash, and then, the managers and the agents come a-calling, and the next thing you know, they're at ICM or William Morris, and they got the big bustle behind them, and they're on their way. And not so much for me, anyway.
Yeah, and I think that's why
ReAnimator was looked at as a bastard child that somehow succeeded in the industry.
Yeah.
If anything, I'd also say this: I got a distinct feeling. It's only a feeling and kind of an observation that most casting directors were women. Mm-hmm. And whether they saw ReAnimator or not, they understood it to be quite ghastly and perhaps more than a little objectifying of women. Yeah. And therefore, because I'm in it, I must endorse that. If that's even a legitimate argument, and therefore they make a personal judgment that maybe they don't want me involved in whatever project they're casting, as their silent rebellion against that gross thing over there having some success. Does that make sense to you?
Jeff, it makes absolute sense.
Doors did not fly open, and it's only because of VHS and then DVDs. These generations of exposure of platforms that allowed subsequent generations to see it, and for it to kind of. Actually, it was before its time, so it kind of became, it was a blossoming that happened over time, as opposed to right out of the gates.
And I think that's one of the
I remember were bad. Half the reviews were Pans or ReAnimator.
Mm-hmm.
And no one remembers that. Siskel and Ebert split on it. One up, one down.
I'm going to assume Ebert liked it.
Later, Ebert liked it, and Siskel did not. And I learned this lesson. 6 months later, they had a. And for those who don't know, they were like TV film critics from competing papers in Chicago. They all didn't always see eye to eye, but they were film reviewers, legit film reviewers. The newspaper elevated the TV, and they had a very popular show. And 6 months later, they did things that you may have missed in movie theaters that are now on VHS, and ReAnimator was one of them. And what do you know? They both just loved it.
Yeah.
And I sat there watching that going, that's strange. Isn't that weird? He changed his mind. He didn't mention that he changed his mind. He just kind of did.
Yeah.
That's weird.
Yeah. And maybe that's why I leapt to asking you about fans and that experience, because, you know, the timing of ReAnimator in a lot of ways is perfect in '85 with the technology, with VCRs, the proliferation of mom and pop video stores, the fans finding these films, that popularity. So that helps. But yeah, the reality of an actor's life is that, well, there was crickets right after that, and it took time for the career to gain any kind of momentum. But fans look at it and see the whole string of things. First of all, you know this, fans think that we actors know everybody. Oh, surely you must know, and that we think about the work we do all the time, when a fan can often know more about something and broadside us with things that we didn't ever know or had forgotten.
Especially true in the Star Trek world. Passion. You know, when the photon torpedo hit the decal on the side of the ship and obliterated the 9, do you think that implied that, it's like, what are you talking about? I don't know what you're talking about. I don't even remember what you're talking about. I have recently, in the pandemic, I'll sit down and go, oh my God, Deep Space Nine is on, like on Icons and Heroes channel or something, and I'll watch it, and I'm in it. I know I'm in it by the title. And then I come in and I do a scene and I go, I really don't remember doing that.
Yeah.
That's me. I said that stuff, but it's all kind of, some of it I kind of will remember, but I just remember kind of the stuff around the shooting the scene. I don't remember the words or anything like that. It's just kind of, it's a strange thing that actors.
It's a very strange thing. The piece lives forever, but the work was either a day or a week or a couple of months. Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, and you go, I was thinking yesterday about how many wonderful actors through the span of time from when theater first started, they were famous in their own way. They were revered by their communities. They were honored, respected, or not. And we don't know anything about them except maybe a name.
Yeah.
Don't know their work, and now it is captured, and so it's this strange new kind of longevity that actors, as you know, both being theater actors, last night's performance is it. Yet there's no capturing of it. That's the beauty of it. It is a moment in time. It's gone.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. And maybe that's the other thing that was in the back of my mind. Oh, I'm sorry. Go ahead, please.
No, that's the end of my dull thought there.
Well, I think the other thing I was groping for about suddenly you find yourself, quote unquote, the horror actor, or you're, and there are actors in film in the history of cinema that, again, were chosen. Karloff didn't plan that. Chaney wasn't, but because of Phantom and Quasimodo, Cushing, Lee, on and on and on, and then your contemporaries, Robert with
Correct. I'm sure did not.
I was friends with Gunnar Hansen for the last 10 years of his life, and you cannot get more diametrically opposed from the character of Leatherface to Gunnar Hansen, this literal gentle giant who was writing about travel in Maine. I mean, so I'm, but that's the thing, because you're coming out of theater, and as a theater actor, I mean, look at the choice look what you reminded me of. You told me that this is a choice between Romeo or this Herbert West, and different actors will different approaches, but in the theater you do have more of a chance to do some range and different things.
Well, and this has been the
film
quixotic battle. Yeah, I've had this quixotic battle, and a lot of actors do. I was raised and nurtured and trained for the stage, first and foremost. And one of the credos is you survive with versatility.
Mm-hmm.
You survive with versatility. You be in the next production if you can do something else besides the one note. Okay? You survive that way. You'll continue to work. And you get to film, and it's this, do that thing you did before, because that's what we want. And so you have this battle between, I'm not going to put the lab coat on and the glasses and a needle so you can capitalize on what I did before. I'm not interested in that. So I've had to do that a lot. Say, listen, you're capitalizing on what I did, but you're not allowing me to be capitalized for it. We love your work. Do that thing you do. By the way, pennies. And you go, thank you, bye.
Right.
Thank you, bye. And then, wow, what a jerk, man. You don't want to work. It's like, dude, you're missing the point here. I'm not your monkey.
I don't know when this popped into my head. Maybe when you just described the simple, basic, iconic elements of Herbert West, but it popped into my head that, there is an action figure, or have been action figures of that character.
Oh, yeah.
Of you.
There's a number of, there's about 3 or 4 that I can think of, yeah.
Yeah. And, it'd be nice if that was bringing regular checks, but that's not how that works. I want to get to Nevermore, but I want to chat for a second about Stuart Gordon. A good thing, a wonderful thing, whether it's theater or film or television, is having a wonderful relationship and working over and over again with people that you like, with people that, in this case, we're actors talking about other directors that you trust. Yes, on the whole business side of being an actor, it's a good thing to get called from the same director again. But
repeat business is a good thing.
So you've had a couple of directors that you've worked with a few times, and I forgot to tell you that you've worked with Jeremy Caston a few times.
A few times, loved you. Yeah, spoke with him recently.
How's he doing?
He's doing well. Lives in rural Maine on a farm. Seems happy.
Right.
Get out of L.A. and find another lifestyle.
And is happy.
He's married, kids, and he's found some peace and fulfillment out of the neurotic frustrations that a city like LA can bring you.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
In 1980 or 81, I was playing Fagin in a musical in Oliver. And Jeremy was one of the boys in the chorus.
Oh, really?
That's when I first met him.
Where was it? Baltimore?
Yeah, this was in a beautiful little theater, actually in the county, outside of the city. So they had money. Nice. They had production money for things. And then jump cut to a couple of years later, I am a friend of mine who is a director who I loved working with, had a Shakespeare company that I was part of, where I did my 12th night, was teaching at the Baltimore School for the Arts, and got a job doing, I think, Romeo and Juliet at the Folger down in D.C. And so he called a bunch of his friends and said, I need you guys to substitute take these classes. So I took an acting class and a Shakespeare class over from Richard, and Jeremy was in the class. This is the same year, by the way, where Tupac Shakur and Jada Pinkett were high school students. Cut 2 years later, and social media catches up with the gap of where do people go after you've met them or worked with them. And I remember Jeremy reaching out and said, you know, Mark, we met when I was in Oliver. And I said, really? So, small world. And you did do a handful of very different genre films with him that are wonderful.
Yes, I did. It's a lovely fellow. I mean, we could get into how, you know, that all came about, but just filled with positive enthusiasm and energy. I had linked up with 3 or 4 other producers that were young and eager and kind. And that project, the first movie I did with them was Attic Expeditions, and it actually crashed and burned. We made a deal. I was going to work the last week of the shoot. I even went and visited them while they were shooting other things. And before my week came along, they called and said, we've run out of money and have to shut down.
Oh.
And I thought, well, that's done. It's real hard to get the money to finish something like that. And what do you know? Maybe 2-3 years later, they came back to me and said, we're ready to shoot those scenes. Here are the dates. Let's go, if you're game.
Yeah.
So good for them. There's a long haul to fulfill a dream, and especially in the face of just running out of funds.
Absolutely.
Before you reach the
miraculous.
The plane doesn't get air after practice, you know, usually. So, well, kudos to them for that perseverance. Anyway, love Jeremy.
You know, he's such a great guy. You know, and obviously in thinking about, you know, working with someone over and over, and I, Jeff, you know, we could talk about Stuart for hours and hours.
A long time. He's a.
Hey, let me ask you.
Yeah.
Have you ever thought seriously about writing memoirs? Not strictly an autobiography, but maybe just a series of essays. You know, how I did it, my life in. Have you ever thought about doing anything like that?
I've thought about it just in terms of my family, I suppose. You know, I come from a family. No one. I got kind of interested some years ago in genealogy. Where did I come from? Who are these people that make up that culminates at the moment with this grain of sand called me? You know, what's the path that brought me to here? Kind of trying to understand lineages. And so I found that it's all lost. You don't know who these people are. You have a birth date, a marriage date, a death date, number of kids, where they lived, and the rest is, who were they? Would I have liked them? Would I have not liked them? I got what's the story? I don't know. And it's gone. And so, no one else in my family pursued this career. No one. And I grew up with them not quite understanding. It wasn't as bad as some people, like maybe you ought to get a degree so you have something to fall back on, son, kind of thing. My parents were very hands-off. Faith. We have faith in you. It's your life. It's your life. Your choices are yours, and we're not going to discourage you or try to advise you about something that we're not really getting, right?
Yeah.
They did live long enough to see me work.
Mm-hmm.
My mom lived long enough to know that ReAnimator came out. I did not encourage her to see it, but that I was maybe on my way before she. I came home from ADR, looping, lip syncing various lines for From Beyond, to one of the worst phone messages that I've ever had in my life.
Oh, man.
And
yeah.
They saw that I was successful in theater and just starting in film. But, you know, I have thought of it, but at the same time, I think it's so, I don't know, back to laziness. And also, I don't really know what wisdom I could impart.
There's time. It just popped into my head because we're just in this conversation scratching the surface on things. There's so many stories. There's so many experiences, and it's all valid. It's all good. You know, and I did cut you off, but before I jump back to where I cut you off, there is that other thing about horror, and I thought of it again while you were talking about your folks and how they were seeing your career move forward. I mean, I come from a family of teachers and artists, and I got the range mostly from my dad, who's a ceramic artist. You'd be really good as a villain on X show. Why aren't you in soap opera? And these things wouldn't connect with my head at any point, although he liked the work that he was seeing. But one of the things that you had just said, and it triggered the thought because I'm not sure Mom wants to see ReAnimator, or should. And that is that people who are not horror genre fans, see, horror fans understand all the colors of the dark. They understand the horror films and stories and things that are on the one end of the spectrum that aren't as bloody and gory. And then there is this whole thing that really erupts, you know, bubbles up in the 70s, but really erupts in the 80s, where it's over-the-top gore, and the films just keep trying to top each other. I think Stuart, Dennis, Paoli, and yourself are partly responsible for that, but that's a good thing. And what I'm saying is that agents, people outside of fandom, there's this weird nearness. I mean, remember where the horror sections were in the mom and pop stores? They were very close to the porn section, you know, in the back room. It has a weird stigma. And I get that. Yeah. So I really understood the comment about, well, agents not, you know, ringing your phone off the hook and that. But I want to get right back to, you said something, you know, I knew Stuart a little bit. And it really was because of Nevermore, the time that we spent on the phone for several months trying to figure out how to get it to Baltimore. And you said that you owe him so much. I mean, you know, so I knew him I do miss him, and I wish that what you and I and Dennis had done recently, in particular. I mean, I wish he was around for that, and there was so much. So I just want to talk about Stuart a little bit. And which came first, the chicken or the egg? Was there an interest in Poe or the opportunity when Stuart chose The Black Cat for the Showtime Masters of Horror series?
Believe it or not,
I just shotgunned a bunch of stuff to you. So
it's okay. Believe it or not, Poe came from me. I was. We're talking. Do the math, Jeff. We're talking 16 years ago. I was looking around. I was actually looking to reference some things that we were talking about just earlier in this talk, that about not getting typecast. And I love history, and so I got this notion in my head. It was unformed. But I wanted to find a person, a historical figure in history that maybe would be a good fit for me to portray.
Sure, yeah.
Perhaps in a movie, maybe a screenplay. And this is with headwind, because I already knew. There aren't very many historical movies being made. In fact, the vast majority of movies that are being made these days by people with a camera and a laptop, they're all contemporary, because that's what their budget can afford. It's far more expensive to do, I don't know, Lincoln, maybe?
Yeah.
Steven Spielberg's Lincoln. I mean, people don't think about this, but it's like, this is trebling, quadrupling your budget when you have period. It just is. In order to bring it to life, you can't have your person walking down the street with telephone poles. You can't have them not wear the costume of it's just legion in how expensive it is, but I didn't care. I was still sort of just pipe dreaming, and I started reading books about or biographies of famous people, and I resisted Poe. I didn't want, my whole goal was not anything connected to horror at all.
And that's because of the Lovecraft connection and the overall, I get it. Yeah.
I wanted to break away from the stereotype, that the categorization that was kind of going on and that every actor has to deal with. How about going absolutely the other way, was my thinking. But I came across a biography of Poe by Mr. Silverman. I'm sure you know it.
Yeah.
And I started reading it, and very soon their description of Poe was, well, that's how tall I am. Well, that's the color of my eyes. This guy is so deeply fascinating and diverse. He just really spoke to me. I sort of thought, this is deep well here. This is so many colors and so many highs and so many lows. And it was just fascinating. And I said to Stuart, why hasn't anyone made a movie about Poe? He's like American Van Gogh. You got Lust for Life with Kirk Douglas. Why isn't there something like that for one of our great American writers?
Yeah.
And Stuart didn't say anything. He took it in and walked away. And And I'm telling you, maybe a year later, he sent me an email with a script attached and said, we got greenlit to do this, and I want you to play Poe.
And this would have been the black cat that in the series that Mick Garris.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes. And I didn't hesitate. First of all, the script is really a brilliant conceit. It takes the story, which is written in first person, of the black cat, but makes Poe the central character, and he's got writer's block, and it's the cat's fault. And that way you can weave in biographical details of his life in with this story of paranoia, obsession. It is genius. It's a deft, wonderful dovetailing. And so it's just beautifully shot, and it just came out so well. I'm so proud of it. And while we were shooting it, Stuart said, I feel like I'm in the presence of Poe here. It's amazing. You should do a one-man show. And I'm like, yeah, no, that's okay. I'm the great resistor to climbing high mountains. I was like, maybe not. But Stuart just gently, for I'm thinking a year and a half or so, gently, constantly, whenever I would talk to him, bring this up, plant this, water that seed he planted, encourage me, think about it. And then one day he called me. We didn't have a script, we didn't have anything, but one day he called and said, I have us a theater. I have us a theater.
Well, now you better fill it with something.
Yeah, and then I knew that it was really kind of meant to be at that point. We're talking 2 years maybe after Masters of Horror. I called up Mick Garris, and I said, Mick, there's this possibility for us to maybe do a one-man show of Poe. Is that costume that they built for me, do you still have that? Does Masters of Horror have that in storage somewhere, possibly? To which Mick said, boy, you're lucky. I said, why? He said, we sold all of our wardrobe of all of our shows to a wardrobe department up in Vancouver. Like, they would take everything.
Right.
And it's due to be shipped out next week. I will pull your costume and send it to you. And he did.
Mick Garris.
Well, and at that point, I said, okay, the universe is encouraging this. Okay?
Yeah.
Because that might have stopped us in our tracks. Because I'm here to tell you, you can't just go into, Men's Warehouse.
Right.
And get something like that. You've played Poe yourself. You know this, right?
Right.
It's hard. But this thing was built for my body, my measurements, and the people that were doing, I knew I was in really great hands. I have no doubt those people had worked in theater before they had worked in film. They were just meticulous about things. Like some of the great costume designers that were.
Exactly. It's about clothing and not costume. Absolutely. Yeah.
So it's these little happy accidents. And that's, then we started forming the show. What do we start with? What do we want to end with? We want to do a story. What poems fit our narrative that we're kind of working on, our arc. And that's where we started. That's how that came about.
And your you're now working with Stuart for the first time in a very different way. And it's not only just a different way, but it's very specific, a different way in theater, in that you've been working with him within the confines and constructs of how movies are made, or television. And that means you have, even though Stuart did rehearse and did rehearse, but generally it is in the world of entertainment, it's always technical. It's the camera's rehearsal. It's the effects rehearsal.
That's all.
And you're doing everything you're making your choices. And if the director doesn't say anything, even if the director knows how to talk to an actor, if he doesn't say anything, it's working, just keep moving. So you've worked in this other medium. So not only is it just now that you're working on theater and a play, which again is not even scripted at this point, it is a question of what would be in this, which means are there snippets of stories, poems? So you're developing something with Stuart. What was the whole process like at that development stage?
Stuart and I getting together and going, what do we want to start the show with? And I believe it was Stuart who suggested Spirits of the Dead.
Yeah.
We knew we wanted to do a story. I chose Telltale Heart just because it spoke to me, and also it was one of the first things of Poe's when I was in high school. Like a freshman in high school, English class. And it jumped off the page then. And so I thought that would be a good centerpiece for the reading of the story. In our play, he actually reads it, but he performs it too, certainly, almost like it's a performance. And then Stuart had done something about Poe many, many years ago at the Organic. So he had done some reading in the past, and I remember reading this passage as well in the biography that I read, that there was a particular recital that Poe did where it seemed that he was doing the whole thing to a woman in the audience. And Stuart hooked onto that as a device where we would be able to, so it's just not Poe standing there and talking to people sort of statically, but that there's a purpose to it. He's wooing someone in the audience. And so it gave me a other specificity during the show, another layer of motivation for things.
Absolutely. And that's one of the, oh my gosh, I'm going to keep biting my tongue. It's one of the show, for those who have not seen it yet, bear with me, the layers, because it could have been here's Poe and he's giving a lecture and it's 1848. And that is one way to communicate to an audience. And then the very fact that it is this specific person, this specific woman with a specific goal that Poe has in mind, works on another two levels in that, you know, as actors, there are these wonderful little things, secrets that we have. And it's not in the script, in the audience. The director doesn't need to know it, but it's the one thing that we know that we want. Now, that secret is revealed in the course of the evening to the audience, which makes it work.
But it's not there. But the audience does pick up something's going on here.
And it grows until, yes.
When you're out and introduce her, but she's not there. They all look. What's he talking about? But it doesn't matter. The point is that it's part of the purpose of the night. And so we constructed a whole thing there with that. We also knew that we wanted to, in keeping with every biography and everything that's known about Poe, is that not only was he a gentleman and eloquent and gentle, but could become a raving drunk.
Yeah.
He just a bender. That he didn't hold his alcohol very long, very well. Either that or he's secretly drinking more than anybody knows. Who knows? But the point is that we wanted the evening to crash and burn.
Yeah.
We knew that. We knew that at some point it starts out like any other recital, and whatever forces come into play, the secret bottle has to come out to calm his nerves at first and make him brave. Another thought I had is I had an uncle who was an alcoholic, and he was subdued, quiet, mumbling, nondescript for the whole week. And then he was the life of the party Friday night, Saturday. Just a different guy.
Right.
Because that's Frank. And you enjoyed him. You enjoyed him then. He was alive. He was charismatic in a strange way. And I got to thinking about that arc, that he starts out quite fine, and then when he starts drinking, actually the audience celebrates it. They love it when he takes the bottle out. Audiences celebrate the bottle.
Yeah.
Celebrate it with a
interesting.
good time. And then it just goes on too long. And the joy and effusiveness turns bitter, angry, spiteful. And that's when the audience goes, ooh, whoa, maybe he should stop.
Yeah.
And he doesn't. Well, that would be an alcoholic, wouldn't it? Do you remember, Mark, and I'm sure you do, that when we performed it for the bicentennial in
2010 in Baltimore.
At the town hall meeting there next to his grave, that a woman at the Q&A afterward, one of the performances, said, "I'm a teacher. I've taught Poe for years. How could you do that to him? How could you do that to him on stage?" He never did that. And I really wanted to get into that one with her.
I have to say,
Stuart, quickly.
Yeah, for the listener, and this happens after many productions of Nevermore, but 2 performances in Baltimore, and after every show, because it is the place where Poe is buried, and this was actually in January for his birth date. And so the performance, Stuart was there and Dennis Paoli was there. And so after a performance, there was a little 15-minute break, the audience came back, and then there was a Q&A. So you now have, imagine Jeffrey, tired and exhausted and exhilarated in a good performance, and Stuart beaming, and Dennis with his arms wrapped around his knees, everybody sitting on the lip of the stage. I'm moderating and fielding questions from the audience, and there are Poe fans and Jeffrey fans and Stuart fans and on. And the energy in the room is so good when this question hit. And you're right, I remember it. And Stuart handled it so well.
And what I knew going into it, and while it was one of those horror moments that is, as it's unfolding, it's like in a film, this would be slow motion time with the glass frozen in midair. I'm sitting there thinking, my God, how do I get us as the moderator out of this? And woman, why are you spoiling the evening? All of these thoughts in a nanosecond.
Well,
and the thing is that there are people, there are Poe fans who, and there's no other way to put this, this is just their reality. They have whitewashed the hero of anything that makes him human.
Only the good, right? You know?
Yeah.
Only, he did not ever wind up in the gutter.
No.
He never borrowed money from people and never paid them back. He never did all the bad things. She's literally correct as far as she knew that he never drank on stage. How do you know that anyway? But maybe it's never been like to the point where we take it. But the point is, you teach English and you've not heard of dramatic license, right?
But you see, yes.
This isn't a literal, theater is not literal, okay? It's not that never happened, therefore, but it is a color. It is Poe wrote a short story called The Imp of the Perverse. The thing that you do that ruins the occasion. There's a story of him getting maybe a job with the new administration in Washington, D.C. He has a friend who knows the son of the new president. They say, come, Poe, to Washington, D.C. for some of the inaugural parties. I will introduce you and get you a job where you can work part-time, be paid, and you'll be able to continue to do your writing, because he was in abject poverty all the time. Poe destroyed that opportunity with his drinking.
He got drunk.
They had to carry him to the train station. He wrecked it. They had to carry him to the train station and put him on the train, bombed. So,
absolutely. This is that thing. Again, I'm going to throw this out for the listener. This is something that Stuart, you mentioned. Stuart mentioned this all the time in pointing, shining a light on the phrase, the imp of the perverse, which, by the way, is the title of a Poe story. And basically, it is this horrible self-induced shooting in the foot syndrome, just having no control of wrecking. The world is going, and everything's going so well, and you've done something to screw it up. Yes. And this is something that I have always loved about Nevermore from the first time I saw it, is that it is this neatest hat trick. I keep talking about how things work on different levels, and it, at its basest, anybody else, any other actor, director, combination of people, okay, it's Poe on stage reenacting a lecture and he's reciting poems. Fine. But this is on so many great levels, and it is, you are absolutely right. This is what drama is. This is what theater is. And there is, yes, that structure of it's a lecture, but to be able to deftly weave the arc of, it's almost, when it's a lecture, you're already breaking the so-called fourth wall because you're talking to the audience. But by showing this arc based on all of these other things of him drinking and getting drunk, of watching that in real time, it's as if you've revealed the curtain. It's a very neat hat trick that the best show does.
I think the best turn of the show is after he has utterly ruined the evening. You think,
literally, yeah.
How in the world can this be redeemed here. This is awful. How's this going to end? I feel pity and a certain kind of revulsion at Poe, which is exactly how people that his contemporaries felt of him. They did admire him, but they also were like, "Oh, that guy," right? So,
Yeah.
How do you back from that? And I think that's the best turn of Dennis's, is that Poe is now shocked back into sobriety from how he's crashed and burned here, and he's lost his everything out the door, literally. And well, now what? And the absolute naked, humble, heartbreaking revealing of why he's acting this way, what's happened to him recently. This has all been bravado because really I am a broken man.
Yeah.
And just on that raw honesty endears the audience, and it is a redemption. At the end, you feel pain for him, but you also, in a weird way, even appreciate him more for all of what he had
you
to
love him.
overcome.
I want to talk about Dennis, but before I do, I want to interject a couple of things that come to mind as I listen and I think about the play. The very fact of Helen being in the audience, who, I apologize, spoiler alert, is not played by an actor. She doesn't exist.
No,
in
it's an
flesh.
imaginary device.
There's an interesting thing, and I don't think I've ever shared this with you. The experience of the audience, once they realize that Helen is in the audience with them, they change. I have felt an audience feel and I've seen sometimes they look, but it's not like this. But the closest thing I can think, it's like when you're watching a magic act and suddenly they're going to randomly pick people from the audience and how most people kind of shrink. There is this weird frisson that happens when they realize, and I'm not talking about the big dramatic moment, I'm talking about leading up to that even. And then you're absolutely right. When he takes, this is another thing I have felt from sitting in the audience. I'm sure Stuart has already told you these things. Dennis has seen the show with live audiences. When Poe takes that first secret quiet nip from the flask,
right?
And you mentioned it, and I had forgotten this. The sort of go man go that kind of starts there, with the audience. This is that weird perversity I think that people have. They want to see this go off the rails. They want him to have his freedom. They want to see how. And you're absolutely right, because the moment it goes too far and is awkward, the moment it's uncomfortable, they suddenly I think the audience has a moment that Poe is about to in the show, where they get a little bit sober and they say, "Oh, wow, boy,
Whoa.
You went too far. This is very uncomfortable."
Wow.
And these are real feelings that I have felt an audience feel. There is nothing like that dance between the actor and a live audience. You don't get that with anything. Maybe a musician can, of course. A stand-up comedian can. They can feel that kind of thing. And these are the things that these multiple levels do in you're my favorite poet, Jeff. I had to slip that in now. It's a marvelous performance. I want to get right to and ask you about Dennis's contribution, Dennis Paoli. You're working on material. You have a shape that the show is going into, and then what did Dennis do?
Right. Well, we were very lucky to have Dennis. First of all, before I get into Dennis, I have to tell you, I said to Stuart, man, this is so much to learn. I mean, are you kidding? So we picked these poems. How am I going to learn all of this stuff? And never forget, Stuart said, learn a poem a week. Just memorize a poem. Just stick with the first poem and memorize it. Get that one. And then move on to the next one. Just one foot in front of the other. And if it's a longer poem, take 2 weeks, take 3 weeks. But just methodically go through. And what do you know? You take walks with the dog, and you're the crazy person because you're talking to yourself. And you can't help but make a gesture, and people look at you like, what's that guy doing? But that's how I did that. So what we needed after we had Poe's writings, they're set in print. That's done. We know that. Then we have to get the connective tissue. And Dennis he's retired now, but he was a Gothic literature professor at Hunter College. In New York City. This was his gig, year in and year out. And so he just went on research mode. And he started digging into Poe's letters, Poe's essays, Poe's book reviews, for material that would dovetail in between that poem, talking about that poem. What did Poe say about that poem? When did he write it? What did he have to say about it? How that dovetails into the next big piece. So I learned all of the poems, and as I was doing that, Dennis would periodically send me these tendrils, these sinews, that I would then stick in between pieces. They were so wonderfully done, and you also learned, like, maybe we don't need that much of that, but we could. But it's always better to have more than less. So we get it and pare it down and get it to where it flows, and that is. Who else could do that? Who else could do that? And so it's wonderful. So the play is what, 95, easily 95% Poe. What I say in between, and of course the writings, it is Poe. It's what he said. These are what he thought, his opinions, what he found outrageous, what he loved, his biography. I was, in his words. And
which
so
all of it resonates with an audience today. Wonderful.
He had such a hard life. I mean, and being orphaned when you're not even 3 years old, a lost soul.
I mean, and the very fact that he is, and I believe this is true, the first American to try to make a living as a writer who was not already moneyed from other business or other endeavors or inheritance like contemporaries or writers that came before.
Yeah, there's that. There's absolutely that. And there's also the other burden that he had was, we're talking the 1830s, 1840s. The literary elite in America was Bostonian. Would you agree with that at this point?
Absolutely. It was all Northern. It was all Yankee. Yeah.
Yankee way up north. Well, not even New York. Way up there. They were the elite cream. The literati. And here he is down there in Richmond, Virginia. They look down their nose at him. And this really really bothered him. They sort of thought nothing of any literary value could possibly come out of the South. They are just not on our level. He was so snobby about it. And he really rebelled against that.
And he, as they looked to Europe, he looked to, well, what is American? This was important to him. So he's fighting battles on all sides.
Right. Right.
You know, yeah.
And he was a scathing literary critic, too. He would read vociferously other people's writings, and what did they call him? The Tomahawk? I mean, he was ruthless.
The Tomahawk Man. Yeah, the Tomahawk Man, because he would, the reference, the allusion being that he would scalp writers because if they were bad.
Right. The only good thing about this new book by Mr. So-and-so is the binding. You know, and you go, oh boy, that's brutal. But
and that was also, you know, that was often, yeah.
Yeah, he just he had fierce and very clear opinions about literature, and he saw a lot of tripe. That's what he saw. A lot of pretentious, lofty nonsense, puffery. Most
Absolutely.
of the time.
I mean,
and it was a little clique that everybody supported everybody else. It's almost like the popular kids at school that are validating each other, and you on the outside are going, "What a bunch of dicks."
Yeah, it's 1840s version of, I don't know who he would be. Would he be Ali Sheedy's character in Breakfast Club? You know, the smart one who's quiet, that has a lot to say, and has a little goth.
He had
a
lot to prove. He had a chip on his shoulder. He was an outsider, always the outsider, always the outsider. A poem he writes, I do it in the show alone. It is, I'm not like everybody else. They see something pretty. I don't.
Yeah.
I don't. He just was, you know, he was just very unique and a genius. You can't write that prolifically and that uniquely. Poetry, short stories, you just can't do it. You can't do it unless you're...
And people,
and, you know...
Yeah. People just don't know. I mean, his day job so often throughout his adult life was writing for magazines, writing for publications, and editing newspapers and magazines.
Right.
So there is a prolific amount of daily, weekly writing that people don't know about.
And how about this? Oh, okay, I got the thing all laid out, but we have open space. Oh, well, I guess I better write a short story.
Yeah, yeah.
And insert that. I mean, these things were done really quickly, and they are standing the test of time. It's like a musician coming in, and you got 12 bars. What would you do? This. See you later. Mm-hmm. Session's over, and it's an iconic guitar solo forever. Right?
Yeah, yeah.
And that was Poe. He was just that good. Just rip it off. No time to really rewrites or anything like that. Don't have the time. And it's just Telltale Heart to me. The more I read it, the more I appreciate the dynamics, the counterpoints, the highs, lows, raise anticipation, relax, raise it some more, relax. It is masterful. Masterful.
It absolutely
to say nothing of the psychological almost modern examination of it's a monologue of a psychotic. It's a monologue of a madman.
Yeah,
but done in such a way that it's chilling and entertaining all at the same time. Anyway.
The average Joe doesn't know this. I mean, you even mentioned that, the first time you were exposed to Telltale Heart, it was in high school. And a lot of people will say, yep, first poem I ever was The Raven. It was high school, this kind of thing. The Corman films, your group, your Stuart and Dennis, I mean, there's a Pit and the Pendulum, so they're adaptations into movies. Poe's best-selling book in his lifetime. Now, it is The Raven that made him a star while he was alive.
Right.
He did have that. It got pirated, and there was no copyright. But his best-selling book was the Concologist's first book, which is basically a book about
seashells.
Seashells. I mean, how bizarre is that? That's what people. Okay, I'm interested in that. As much as they ate up the horror stuff even then. They liked the horror stories, even though some publishers were, well, maybe you're going a little too far with this one. There's a weird... Maybe a
mainstream science-based, although I think some of the stuff that he wrote was utter... I don't know for sure, but I did read something where it was like, well, he lifted that from here and he lifted it. It was something that he did do for money, like fill in all
right.
the drawings with the scientific stuff. So it may have been more mainstream.
Absolutely.
Successful that way. You speak of The Raven, when he was so kind of not liked because of his reviews of other people's work, that when he first published The Raven, he did it under a pseudonym. Pseudonym. And it got rave reviews. And then he said, "Hi, it's me." Hi, I did that. Because he kind of knew that if he just went out there with his name on it, their vitriol towards him lambasting their works or their friends' works would have not given him the praise out of the gate.
It's very crafty. Let the work speak for itself before the brand
speaks for itself.
Overshadows it.
Because it's me. And so that was very clever. Yeah, it's me. Hi.
It is, because I firmly believe that from the beginning of his writing career, when he was in his 20s, he wanted his name out. He wanted to be known. There is this weird mystery when he's in the army, in between the army and West Point, where he publishes in Boston Tamerlane and Other Poems by a Bostonian. And I am one of these people that tends to believe he was evading creditors from the University of Virginia. Because everything else about him, leading up to that and after that, is trying to make a name for himself.
Well, yeah. But
that's a whole kettle of fish. That's a whole...
Well, he also took money from the West Point cadets. He used to make these little poems up about all the officers at West Point, and everybody got a kick out. And so he said, listen, I'm going to publish those. Everybody, contribute to my publishing costs. And they did. And then he proceeded to just use that money to put out other poems. And not... so hey! The other thing about West Point is fascinating.
What?
I'm sorry, go ahead.
No, I was going to say, what they were expecting, what they're expecting is Lieutenant Jones has no sense. He sits on the, where Limerick's.
Right.
But anyway, what?
Right.
I'm sorry to cut you off.
I was just going to say he went to West Point at a time, and in the sweep of history, those people, cadets that he went to school with, by the time the War of 1812 and then the Civil War, he's dead at that point, but he must have gone to school with all of those generals and majors and colonels.
Yeah.
That in the sweep of history were leading men into battle years later. You ever think about that?
Yeah, I mean,
he must have owned a lot of those guys.
And he was successful. He was good at his job as long as he could hang with that. And, the country wasn't at war at that time. We were in between things. And, but you touched on this earlier, too. Everybody else going to the University of Virginia, which was brand spanking new when Poe went there.
Yeah.
Jefferson was still alive, but I don't think they ever met. He's surrounded by, and I'm sorry for the Breakfast Club analogy again, but he was surrounded by the Richies. They had the money to go to, whether it was University of Virginia and then West Point. They didn't,
right.
They weren't broke begging money from their foster father, which is a whole other conversation there.
Yeah.
Listen,
and put this that he, kind of was probably bored with his classes. It wasn't speaking to him, and I think he got some betting debts. He accrued some of those as well. So it wasn't exactly like the golden-haired boy here. He was a bit of a wild child, I think.
No, definitely. So
anyway,
we're all hoping for health, happiness. We want to stay creative and alive. We're muscling through. I think there's light at the end of the tunnel with COVID and the pandemic. What would you like to see happen with Nevermore moving forward? You know me, and anything I can do with it, I want to see you do it on stage for audiences. I'll aid and abet in any way I can for you to do it. If you want to, I would just love for that to happen. But what would you like to see moving forward with Nevermore?
Well, a couple of thoughts on that. It's been a struggle for a long time trying to get this thing captured in some sort of, you used to say filmed, but we can't anymore because it's not accurate.
Right.
But part of me is always, I'd like to have it done that, but part of me always just wonders if the piece actually has the same impact in that medium. I just don't know. Wouldn't know until it happens. Film is an awfully visual, and this piece is verbal from start to finish. Doing live performances again, I'm older.
What does that mean?
I worry.
You're wearier. You're not tired. You've got the energy. You don't look your age.
Well, it's not. That's not a known thing. I know that just doing one performance takes an immense amount of prep, lonely prep, that no one, kind of like training for a fight. A lot of prep time, a lot that no one seems to kind of, just come and bring it and do it. Like next week, it's like, whoa.
No, it's enormously lonely and hard work. Yeah.
Yeah, it's a big lift. And I'm just not as young as I used to be. Maybe it's just me worrying, but it's like, do I have the stamina? It's not one of those shows that I can turn around and do a matinee and then an evening performance, and then two more tomorrow on the weekend. It is takes its toll, and
physically draining. Yeah,
fine when you're younger, but as you get older, you begin to go, well, can I pull this off?
Yeah.
And then I get in the costume, and then I get all the stuff squared away, and I step out there, and I'm good in many ways. It's just my own. Maybe it's that kind of wariness that sees to it that I prepare. This is not something I can just.
You don't throw it in the suitcase, get on, and then bang, you do it. It's a production, and it's a process, and you, as a performer and a human being, it does take preparation, and it is physically and emotionally exhausting. It's difficult.
And the other aspect of it is that I'm sort of a one band show here, in that you've helped me out in the past, but sometimes people will ask me to bring it someplace, and it's like they don't really understand. I don't have a prop person. I don't have a wardrobe person. I don't have anybody that precedes me and talks to the lighting guy and the sound guy and I have no roadies. Okay.
Right. You don't have, for almost most of these productions, you don't have a small production team that you need. Yeah.
Yeah, I don't have anybody going, your guitar is tuned. It's out on stage. I put new strings on it. It's beautifully tuned. All you have to do is strap it on. No.
And work.
I have to do all of the necessary prep stuff. It exhausts me to think about it. It exhausts me to talk to places and try to describe to them the kind of period chair I want. Even when I send them a picture, they'll go, well, this, and it looks like something from someone's dining room set from 1948, as opposed to it's like, that's not going to do it. Right? Try again. So it's exhausting. It's exhausting.
Because for fans who don't know, you have done this in beautiful, well-appointed theaters with good technical support and a nice, just enough production team, and I've helped out a couple of times there. You've done it in a movie theater auditorium. You've done it on a cruise ship you've done it in a hotel, a ballroom thing.
I have done a cruise ship, but I will say those are fine theaters in those cruise ships with great technical staff. So that was the least of it.
Well, but it just sounds, But you're often doing it in places where the people who are financing and inviting the show and putting the show up, often are not theater people, and they don't have the facility, and that makes it. I mean, Baltimore was rough. You traded I was about to say charm. You traded the fact that Poe's body was laying outside of the building at Westminster Hall, but Westminster Hall is an ex-church that is rented for weddings now. So it's a big cavernous room without the technical support.
With the Westminster Hall, I was surprised when we went in there that there were no lights. There was no lighting. All we had were these lamps, like spot lamps that we could direct towards the stage, but there were no dimmers. There was no extra lights on stands. It was like, oh my God, I thought I was going to walk into kind of a theater here. This is just basically as bare bones and inadequate as you can get. It was.
I don't want to.
Yet, Mark, I was able to place my hand on Poe's grave before I went to places. I can't tell you how meaningful it was to have had that experience. It's such an honor.
Well, I'm grateful that it happened, and for the listener, and I'm not going to name names, although oh boy, do I want to. But the thing is that you guys wanted to do it in Baltimore in 2009, which was Edgar Poe's 200th. That was the bicentennial. And it got handed to me. I was doing a lot of events producing for the Poe House and Museum in Baltimore. To make a long story short, it got handed to me. And that's where my relationship with Stuart really started, because we spoke once a week. I went, did a location scout, told him what we had, told him what kind of budget the city of Baltimore was going to spend on this, that, and the other, where we're going to put you all up, all this stuff. I'm coordinating. I'm sending him pictures over the internet or over the phone, whatever it was. That was the first time I ever had the task of, this is the furniture we used at the Steve Allen Theater in LA, and on and on and on. And, so it didn't happen for various reasons. And I even spoke to Stuart for a month. I was pitching other theaters here in town that I knew had the technical support from top to bottom, including a house staff and everything else. And this was, not lost on me. We want to do it where Poe is. And so what rolled around was the January, was the birthday. And, I'm sorry that a certain amount of money and a certain amount of attention.
That's not your doing. I would have just thought that a facility, a place like that would have had. There's only so much you can do. You're not running that facility. I would just thought somebody would have said, we need some lights. We need to hire somebody to hang some lights. And
I need to tell your fans, and I need to tell the listeners this, because if anything bonded me to, I keep referring to you guys as Team Nevermore, whether I'm talking to you or Dennis or a little late Stuart back in the day, but not so recently, not so long ago. But the thing that, being a theater person, being a film person, being the thing that bonded, the thing that touched my heart so much was not the first meal we ever had. You were asking, where can we get some sushi, and just
because that's a good meal before a show. Sushi.
It's perfect.
It's light and it's protein. It gives me,
But it was the fact that Stuart and Dennis ran sound and lights for Baltimore. That was just the thing that just shot right into my heart. And I said, the movie Freaks, it's like, I got that. You just roll up your sleeves. It isn't, and and you have 2 tin cans with light bulbs in it, and we're playing a CD, but Stuart and Dennis jumped in, and, you guys did the show. It was great.
But here, the great Stuart Gordon directed a lot of movies. When we opened with Nevermore and had a run, every night that there was a show, Stuart came and ran the lights and sound.
That's right.
For
Steve Allen.
For a
That's
very
right.
long time. Stuart Gordon did that.
Yeah.
Most directors, they'll go, okay, good, you got that, I'll see you later. I did my part, bye. I'll come check on the show in a week or so. Not Stuart. He was there.
Yeah.
Running cues. So that was nothing new to me. And let me, how do you think I felt? That Stuart felt so strongly and was so supportive about this piece that he would, night after night give up his evenings to come and run. There aren't that many cues in the show. It's not like it's,
right.
But I mean, it got
it's
to
not
the point
Nevermore
where
the musical yet.
No.
Oh, that gives me an idea. I
I
might call Dennis after we hang up and talk about that idea. No, I'm kidding. Nevermore with an exclamation point.
This has been a great talk, and I urge people, I hope people will listen to the Audible recording, but it is a good glimpse of the show, but there's a lot of, it's not like watching it, but it is pretty good.
It is
pretty good
indeed.
The spirit of the show.
It's its own animal. I'm very proud that it happened as a document. I mean, it is a spoken piece that comes through wonderfully. But I will just wrap this up on my end by saying, Jeff, I want to see you a visual document. Let's call it a film. Let's call it a video. I'd like to see something really high-end done. And if you get the bug, if you get an opportunity, I cheer you on. I'd like to see you perform the show a few more times.
Well, that's it. I would like to.
That's just my wish, because audiences love it.
Yeah, I have so many wonderful memories, and I have to tell you that you coming to me with this forgotten recording of the Nevermore performance in Boston, with this idea of putting it out in audio form, was really great to collaborate with you to get that done in the midst of COVID, when nothing else was kind of going on for anybody. You kind of inspired me, and we had a lovely working relationship to get this thing put together, because it's not exactly, it wasn't just, it's done, and it took a lot of work and a lot of effort by a number of people to get this thing into the shape that it's in. And that's a testament to you, Mark. You're the one who put this forth. So bravo.
Well, thank you. And all I can say is that when I first saw Nevermore, I loved it. And so I'm very glad, very proud to have some small part of its history. And more people. And
on a humorous note, when I did perform it in Baltimore, I did get to meet maybe at least a half a dozen Poe performers,
impersonators.
Including one guy that was about 6'5". It's like, I do a Poe. It's like I'm looking up at him like Abdul Karim Jabbar or something. Really,
he was not only 6'5", he was blonde. He was.
It's like maybe Lincoln would be a better choice for you. I don't know, but
funny.
It just speaks the enthusiasm that people have for Poe's work, and they just want to emulate it, and I get that completely. But I'm in Baltimore, and they're all there. It's like, okay.
There was an event,
maybe this was in the back of my mind. We did an event once, and I called it Night of 100 Poes, and the centerpiece, it was around Halloween, of course, and his death anniversary is October 9th, so that whole time of year. And I think there was a costume contest. And, yeah, imagine them all dressed in the front row.
I can't, and I can't. All right. All the best to you, and this was wonderful talk.
Thank you.
Thanks a lot.
Thank you, Jeff.
See you.
Bye-bye.
Thank you very much for listening. As always, we appreciate our listeners on the Redfield Arts Audio Podcast. Thanks to Jeffrey Combs, for spending some time to chat with us. And just a reminder, if you haven't heard it yet, and I hope that you do, Nevermore, An Evening with Edgar Allan Poe is available from Redfield Arts Audio worldwide on Audible and other great audio platforms. Thanks for joining us. Until next time, this is Mark Redfield.
From Redfield Arts Audio, available now worldwide on Audible. Jeffrey Combs, Nevermore, An Evening with Edgar Allan Poe. Written by Dennis Paoli. Directed by Stuart Gordon. Recorded before a live audience.
You are here this evening, no doubt, to hear yours truly recite the most popular poem ever written upon these shores. For many years, my stories, my tales, that were more popular than my poetry. Magazines and readership just demanded, new tale, every issue. Okay, do you hear it? Louder, 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 louder! Villains, I shrieked. Dissemble no more, I admit the deed. Tear up the planks. Here, it is the beating of his hideous heart.